A new architecture of control does not announce itself with fanfare. It arrives slowly in policies, platforms, and phrases, so subtle that most mistake it for progress. The danger of a quiet agenda is that it feels inevitable. Look carefully and you will see the pattern. Institutions rewriting norms, corporations shaping desires, and technologies rerouting attention. Each change appears isolated, harmless, even sensible, until the pieces form a map of redesign. The map points not to chaos but to a precise program of transformation. They no longer need overt power, they prefer design. By shaping incentives, narratives, and infrastructures, power reconfigures society from the inside out, making resistance seem like nostalgia for a world that just was. Design eats dissent quietly, one policy at a time. Language becomes a tool of architecture. Words like innovation, safety, and resilience are recoded to justify changes that consolidate influence. When the vocabulary shifts, so does what is thinkable. And once something is unthinkable, it is unchallengeable. Education is being repurposed. Curricula are streamlined, critical thinking outsourced to algorithms, and vocational paths promoted as identity. The purpose is not to enlighten, but to produce predictable participants for the new system. A generation learns to fit slots, not to imagine alternatives. Economics is being rewritten under the guise of efficiency. Gig labor, surveillance marketplaces, and data rents replace traditional livelihoods while a new set of metrics defines human value. Productivity becomes compliance masked as progress, and those who resist are labeled inefficient. Public space is shrinking. Digital platforms privatize conversation and convert a civic life into engagement metrics. Debate becomes a product, dissent a disruption to be managed. Where people once met, algorithms now moderate, and moderation is neutrality only in appearance. Social credit and reputation systems creep in by design, not decree. Ratings, trust tokens, and gamified reputations shape behavior subtly. Comply to score, perform to belong, sacrifice privacy to gain access. Consent becomes an opt-in prison. Surveillance is no longer solely about watching. It is about shaping incentives. Cameras and sensors are paired with rewards, nudges, and smart contracts to make particular behaviors easier, cheaper, more socially desirable. The system rewards conformity gently until conformity is the only rational choice. Health narratives are repurposed for governance. Wellness markets, biometric monitoring, and preventative interventions create a framework where the body becomes a site of regulation and data becomes the currency of care. Care with conditions attached. Urban design follows the new blueprint: sensors, restricted zones, and safe corridors that channel movement. Cities become operable landscapes that optimize for efficiency rather than freedom. Architecture transforms citizens into manageable flows. Finance is redesigned to be both ubiquitous and opaque. Invisible fees, algorithmic underwriting, and credit scoring that reads behavior more than balance sheets reroute opportunity to those who fit the model and away from those who do not. Access is rebranded as merit. Cultural narratives are curated. Entertainment industries accelerate normalization of new norms, converting radical concepts into mainstream tastes. When fiction rehearses policy, the public begins to accept the future as inevitable. Storytelling becomes policy incubation. Tech giants become proto-states, offering services that once required public infrastructure. In exchange for convenience, citizens trade autonomy. Platforms mediate daily life, and mediation concentrates power. The private becomes the infrastructural. The infrastructural becomes private. Law adapts by stealth. Regulations are made to seem protective, but often they embed architectures of control, compliance frameworks, reporting obligations, and liability rules that reward centralized governance while punishing decentralized alternatives. law becomes scaffolding for redesign. Labor is reframed as a series of microtasks executed in ecosystems. The worker becomes a modular node in a global assembly line, replaceable and measurable. Dignity is abstracted into KPIs, and everything human is reduced to data points that managers optimize. Democracy is being gamified. Engagement loops replace deliberation. Polls and trending topics dictate attention, while institutions respond to metrics rather than moral claims. Participation is measured in clicks, not commitments, and civic duty dwindles into performative acts. Privacy is reframed as anachronism. Consent screens and default settings nudge people to share, while the logic of platforms assumes data extraction is normal. Norms shift, and what was once protected becomes public by design. Resistance becomes friction. Infrastructure is privatized in pieces. Water, energy, and communications are routed through corporate stacks. Efficient, interoperable, and monetized. Resilience is sold as a subscription, and the public commons recedes behind paywalls. Security becomes a service. Ideology is transmitted through design language. UX, flows, and affordances carry implicit beliefs about human behavior. A nudge here, a dark pattern there. Design shapes will more reliably than mandates because it hides its hand in utility. Science and expertise are enlisted into the agenda. Selective research funding, sponsored consensus, and epistemic gatekeeping legitimize chosen pathways while marginalizing alternatives. The veneer of evidence covers political choices made in laboratories. Dissent is outsourced to bots or boxed into controlled forums. When protest appears, it is gamified, surveilled, and filtered. Authentic mass movements are replaced by curated campaigns that never threaten the core architecture. Resistance is sanitized. The market of attention rewards spectacle over substance. Outrage is algorithmically amplified, nuance is throttled. Complexity becomes a liability, and simplification becomes policy. The future is decided by what captures a glance, not what merits a study. Civic literacy erodes, replaced by functional literacy for platform use. People learn to navigate apps but not to question systems. Competence becomes transactional, and citizens lose the language to demand structural change. Power migrates toward those who can design systems, not those who can govern them ethically. Engineers and product managers become the new architects of social order, and technical decisions harden into policy. Code acts like law without debate. Crisis becomes opportunity to install permanent redesigns. Emergency measures normalize exceptional controls. Temporary surveillance persists. Wartime logistics become peacetime defaults. The state of exception ossifies into the new normal. Networks of influence replace traditional hierarchies. Public-private consortia coordinate policy, investment, and messaging across borders with little accountability. The old levers of democratic oversight strain against transnational architectures, and yet the agenda relies on plausible deniability. Each change is defensible on its own, each benefit real for some, and the overall pattern dissolves into debates about trade-offs rather than recognition of a coherent redesign. That is its strength and its cruelty. For those who sense a restructuring, the first task is to name it. Naming pierces the haze and gives form to the formless. Once you can see the agenda, you can map its instruments and challenge them. Awareness alone is not enough. Mapping the architecture requires solidarity, skills, and institutions that can contest design rather than merely adapt to it. People must learn to design alternatives, not only critique existing patterns. The quiet redesign is not inevitable. It is engineered, and if it is engineered, it can be engineered differently. But that demands attention, imagination, and the political will to reclaim commons from the hands that privatize them in silence. Every agenda has a climax, the moment when its outlines become undeniable. We are approaching that point now as fragments of redesign converge into a single architecture that surrounds us from every direction. What was once invisible begins to cast shadows. The patterns emerge, undeniable to those willing to look. But recognition is dangerous, because once you see the system, you cannot unsee it. The greatest trick of the hidden agenda is convincing people that nothing has changed. By disguising redesign as progress, it erases resistance before it even begins. People celebrate their own containment. Look closer. The rituals of daily life are shifting. Work is not work, but task flows. Conversations are not conversations, but data transactions. Communities are not communities, but managed networks. Everything feels the same, yet nothing is untouched. The sense of freedom lingers, but it is hollow. Choices multiply, but they are curated. Voices echo, but they are filtered. Each expression is real, but pre-approved, as if society itself has become an algorithm. The architects of this system know that force provokes resistance. Control imposed loudly invites rebellion, so they choose silence, designing incentives so soft that compliance feels voluntary. The leash is velvet, but it is still a leash. Once, society was built on messy debates and clashing visions. Now, it is streamlined, optimized for efficiency. What is lost is not only disagreement, but imagination itself. The future narrows into a corridor with no exits. Generations are born inside this corridor. They know nothing else. For them, optimization is normal, data extraction is natural, and surveillance is invisible. They cannot rebel against a prison they never knew they entered. The hidden agenda succeeds by erasing memory. Each redesign overwrites the past until the world before becomes unimaginable. People laugh at those who remember, calling them paranoid or outdated. Memory itself becomes rebellion, and yet the cracks widen. Some notice inconsistencies, promises of empowerment that yield dependency, promises of connection that deepen isolation. Beneath the surface, unease spreads like static in the background of every conversation. Awareness grows in silence. In private whispers, encrypted chats, and fleeting eye contact, people begin to recognize they are not alone. A new map of society is being drawn, one that traces the contours of resistance. The redesign relies on sleepwalkers, not awakened minds. The moment too many awaken, the architecture trembles. This is why narratives of conformity are repeated endlessly, to drown out the dangerous power of awareness. But no redesign is perfect. Every system has blind spots, vulnerabilities, and cracks where light enters. The hidden agenda fears these cracks more than any protest, because they reveal the illusion of inevitability. Hope lies in naming. Once the agenda is named, it becomes a story, and stories spread faster than silence. Stories transform invisible power into visible threat, and once seen, threats can be challenged. Yet power will fight to the end. Already, counter-narratives flood the media, labeling skeptics as extremists, conspiracists, or enemies of progress. To see the system clearly is to risk exile from polite society. Still, more choose exile than blindness. They refuse the comfort of curated lives and embrace the raw difficulty of truth. For them, awakening is painful, but it is also the first taste of freedom. The quiet redesign cannot tolerate true freedom. Freedom creates unpredictability, and unpredictability is the one thing systems of control cannot contain. Freedom is the virus that destabilizes design. This is why every incentive punishes unpredictability. Innovation is curated, creativity is monetized, and dissent is processed into safe channels. But true rebellion leaks through the cracks, uncontainable by architecture. Society faces a choice it does not recognize. Continue drifting into a managed future where every move is designed, or reclaim the messy, uncertain, but authentic freedom of a world not optimized for control. The hidden agenda thrives in apathy. Its greatest fear is engagement. Not the shallow clicks of platform life, but deep, intentional engagement with truth, memory, and imagination. That is where resistance is born. Resisting does not mean destroying technology or rejecting progress. It means redesigning the redesign, shaping systems for humanity rather than compliance. It means refusing to accept inevitability as truth. But this requires numbers, voices, and awareness. It requires those who see the cracks to speak before they are silenced. It requires courage to risk being mocked in order to keep the possibility of freedom alive. Every viewer who recognizes this truth becomes part of a chain reaction. Awareness spreads in unpredictable ways, multiplying quietly like sparks hidden in dry grass. One day, it ignites, and when it ignites, no architecture of control can contain it, because fire spreads faster than design. Fire consumes illusions, burns through narratives, and clears ground for something new. The system knows this, which is why it works tirelessly to distract you, to numb you, to drown you in noise. If you forget the fire inside, the redesign is complete. But if you remember, if you dare to act, the fire remains alive. And that fire can undo decades of control in a single breath of awakening. So the question is no longer whether there is a hidden agenda. The evidence surrounds you. The real question is, will you see it before it is too late? The decision rests in your hands. To ignore the truth is to surrender silently. To embrace it is to reclaim what was stolen. The cost is courage, but the reward is freedom. And now, the choice is yours. If you refuse to sleepwalk into their redesign, subscribe to this channel right now. Join the few who dare to see, who dare to question, who dare to resist. Do not wait, because the longer you hesitate, the deeper the redesign becomes.